All right, check this out. In 1978, the Dodge D-Series pickup outsold Ford's F-150 in 12 states, and by 1995, Chrysler had killed it off completely. Today, we're uncovering the rise and fall of the truck that should have dominated America's roads. And let me tell you, this isn't just about pickups, it's about how Detroit destroyed one of the toughest workhorses ever built. The 1972 launch that redefined tough. Let's start with where it all began. The Dodge D-Series hit dealerships in September 1972, and within 6 months, it was the talk of every construction site from Dallas to Detroit. Chrysler spent $14 million on the launch, the biggest marketing push for a pickup since the 1960s, and they positioned it as the working man's truck with actual working-class power. The base model D100 came with a slant-six engine that could pull 6,000 pounds and run for 300,000 miles without major repairs, something Chrysler engineers had tested by driving prototypes through Death Valley for 2 straight summers. That inline six wasn't flashy, but it was bulletproof, and farmers and contractors bought them by the thousands because they knew these trucks would still be running when their grandkids learned to drive. The adult Tonka toy, advertising that changed everything. Here's something that made Madison Avenue take notice. Dodge's 1974 ad campaign called the D-Series America's most capable pickup, and they proved it by having real construction workers, not actors, abuse these trucks on camera. The commercials showed D-Series pickups hauling concrete blocks, towing horse trailers up mountain passes, and getting driven through mud pits that would have buried a sedan, all while the narrator talked about honest work for honest pay. Chrysler spent $8 million on television spots that aired during Monday Night Football and NASCAR races, reaching exactly the blue-collar audience who actually bought trucks for work, not fashion. Within a year, D-Series sales jumped 127%, and Dodge dealerships in rural America couldn't keep them in stock, with some customers waiting 3 months for delivery of a base model work truck. The engine that wouldn't quit. Now this is where Dodge separated itself from Ford and Chevy. The 318 cubic inch V8 option, introduced in 1974, became legendary for its durability and simplicity. This wasn't the biggest or most powerful engine available, but it delivered 150 horsepower and 260 pound-feet of torque while being so mechanically simple that farmers could rebuild it in their barn with basic tools. The 318 used a 2-barrel carburetor, hydraulic lifters, and cast iron everything, which meant it weighed more but lasted forever. And mechanics loved it because parts were cheap and available at every auto parts store in America. Dodge offered a 5-year, 50,000-mile powertrain warranty on the 318, unheard of in 1974. And warranty claims were so rare that Chrysler's finance department actually questioned whether customers were really driving these trucks or just parking them. The U-line bed that contractors loved. Here's something that made the D-Series the contractor's first choice. The U-line bed design, standard on all D-Series models, had a flat-load floor with no wheel well intrusions, giving you a genuine 8-foot flat surface that could accommodate full sheets of plywood without cutting. Ford and Chevy's pickups had wheel wells that jutted into the bed, forcing contractors to cut materials or stack them awkwardly. But Dodge's engineers had designed the frame to allow the wheels to sit outside the bed rails completely. The tailgate could support 1,000 pounds when open, essentially giving you a 10-foot loading platform, and the bed itself was coated with a spray-on liner that Chrysler called Duracote, which was basically thick paint with rubber particles that prevented rust for decades. Contractors reported that even after 10 years of hauling concrete, lumber, and tools, the bed floor showed minimal wear, something you absolutely could not say about competitor trucks from that era. The 1976 Adventurer package that created a cult. Right? This is where Dodge accidentally created a collector's item. The 1976 Adventurer package transformed the basic work truck into something special, with gold and white two-tone paint, plush bucket seats with actual cushioning, and real wood grain trim on the dashboard that didn't look completely fake. Chrysler charged $847 for the Adventurer package, which sounds cheap now, but represented nearly 15% of the truck's base price, and buyers lined up because it was the first time you could get a pickup that didn't feel like punishment to drive. The package included chrome bumpers, upgraded carpeting instead of rubber mats, and an AM/FM radio with an actual cassette player. Luxuries that made the Adventurer popular with ranchers and business owners who wanted capability without sacrificing comfort. Dodge sold 23,000 Adventurer packages in 1976 alone, and today, surviving examples in good condition sell for $35,000 to $45,000 at collector auctions, 10 times what they cost new. The four-wheel drive system, Ford couldn't match. Here's where Dodge engineering really shined. The Power Wagon 4x4 system, available on D-Series trucks starting in 1974, used a part-time transfer case with a 2.57 to 1 low range that gave these trucks genuine off-road capability that made Ford's 4x4 system look weak. The front axle was a Dana 44 with locking hubs, the rear was a Dana 60, and both were practically indestructible, with failure rates so low that Chrysler's warranty department rarely saw claims related to drivetrain components. Farmers in Montana and Wyoming bought D-Series 4x4s because they could pull hay wagons through 2 feet of snow, and Forest Service departments across the West replaced their Chevy trucks with Dodge Power Wagons because they simply didn't break down in rough terrain. The system added 600 pounds and cost $1,200 extra, but buyers considered it essential, and 4x4 models represented 34% of all D-Series sales by 1978, proving Americans wanted trucks that could go anywhere and do anything. Why your D-Series still runs. Now, this is something that separated Dodge from the competition. The D-Series was built with serviceability in mind, meaning regular people could maintain and repair these trucks without specialized tools or computer diagnostics. The engine bay was spacious enough that you could actually see and reach every component. The electrical system used simple relays and fuses instead of complex modules. And the suspension consisted of leaf springs front and rear that a decent mechanic could replace in a driveway over a weekend. Chrysler published detailed service manuals that they sold at dealerships for $12, and these manuals included exploded diagrams, torque specifications, and troubleshooting guides that assumed you had basic mechanical knowledge and wanted to fix things yourself. This DIY-friendly design meant D-Series trucks stayed on the road longer than competitors, with many examples exceeding 400,000 miles with only regular maintenance, and even today, you'll still see 1970s D-Series trucks working on farms and construction sites, running on their original engines and transmissions. All right, folks, if you're enjoying this trip down memory lane, do me a favor and hit that like button. Drop a comment telling me if you or your family owned a D-Series, and subscribe so you don't miss our next video. Now, let's continue. The 1981 redesign that started the problems. Here's where Chrysler made their first major mistake. In 1981, they redesigned the D-Series with a new front end featuring quad headlights and more chrome, and they raised prices by 18% to pay for the changes that nobody had requested. The new styling looked more modern, but lost the aggressive, purposeful appearance that had made the truck distinctive, and longtime buyers complained that it looked too much like a luxury vehicle and not enough like a work truck. Worse, Chrysler cheapened the interior materials to offset redesign costs, replacing the durable vinyl seats with thinner fabric that wore out quickly, and substituting actual metal dashboard components with plastic that cracked in hot weather. The 1981 models also introduced more complex emissions equipment that reduced horsepower by 15% and created reliability issues that had never existed before, with vacuum lines and solenoids that failed regularly and confused mechanics who were used to simple carbureted engines. The Ramcharger competition that divided resources. Right, this is when Chrysler's strategy stopped making sense. In 1979, Dodge launched the Ramcharger SUV using the D-Series platform, and suddenly, Chrysler was competing against itself for the same customers. The Ramcharger was basically a D-Series with a fiberglass cap permanently attached and rear seats, marketed toward families who wanted truck capability with car comfort, but it cannibalized D-Series sales instead of expanding the market. Chrysler invested heavily in Ramcharger marketing, spending $12 million on advertising in 1982 alone, money that came directly from the D-Series budget and left the pickup with minimal promotional support. Dealerships prioritized selling Ramchargers because they carried higher profit margins, $1,200 per unit compared to $750 for a base D-Series, and sales staff would actively steer customers toward the SUV even when they came in asking about pickups. By 1984, Ramcharger sales had reached 67,000 units annually, while D-Series sales declined to 143,000, down from 198,000 in 1978, proving that Chrysler had successfully convinced customers to buy their more expensive product while weakening their core truck business. The quality control crisis of 1982. Here's when things started falling apart. In 1982, Chrysler assembly plants were struggling financially, and quality control became an afterthought as the company focused on survival during the recession. D-Series trucks began leaving factories with missing bolts, improperly torqued components, and electrical systems that malfunctioned immediately, problems that had never plagued earlier models. Consumer Reports, which had recommended the D-Series in 1978, downgraded it to not recommended in 1983 after documenting widespread quality issues, including transmission failures, electrical shorts, and body panels that rusted through within 3 years in Salt Belt states. Warranty claims skyrocketed by 340% between 1981 and 1983, costing Chrysler millions and destroying the reputation for reliability that had made the D-Series successful. Dealerships reported customers returning trucks multiple times for the same problems, and word spread quickly in the tight-knit communities of contractors and farmers who had once been Dodge's most loyal customers, many of whom switched to Ford and never came back. The Iacocca decision that killed the truck. Now this is the moment that sealed the D-Series fate. In 1984, Lee Iacocca decided Chrysler would focus on cars and minivans, explicitly telling executives that the truck market was Ford and Chevy's game, and Dodge couldn't win. This decision came despite the D-Series still selling over 120,000 units annually and maintaining decent profit margins. But Iacocca believed Chrysler's limited resources should go toward vehicles where they could dominate rather than compete. The D-Series development budget was slashed from $45 million to $8 million annually, ensuring the truck would receive no significant updates or improvements, while Ford and Chevy invested hundreds of millions into their competing models. Engineering staff was reassigned to minivan and K-car projects, leaving the D-Series with a skeleton crew of designers who couldn't keep pace with changing market demands and stricter regulations. Iacocca's strategy made sense for overall corporate survival, as the minivan did save Chrysler, but it guaranteed the D-Series would slowly become obsolete and uncompetitive, a sacrifice Iacocca considered acceptable for the company's broader turnaround plan. The Dakota launch that replaced it. Here's where Chrysler gave up on the full-size market. In 1987, Dodge launched the Dakota midsize pickup, and company executives made clear this was the future, while the D-Series became the past. The Dakota was smaller, more fuel-efficient, and cheaper to produce, exactly what Chrysler wanted, but it couldn't haul what the D-Series could, and farmers and contractors knew it immediately. Chrysler invested $250 million developing the Dakota, while the D-Series limped along with its 1970s platform barely updated. And the message to customers was obvious. Dodge didn't care about serious truck buyers anymore. Dealerships received 10 Dakotas for every D-Series they ordered, and sales training focused exclusively on the new truck, leaving the full-size model to die slowly in the corner of the lot. The strategy might have worked if the Dakota had been competitive, but Ford's Ranger and Chevy's S10 dominated the mid-size market, leaving Chrysler with neither a competitive full-size truck nor a successful compact, the worst of both worlds. The final model year that nobody wanted. Right, this is where it got sad. The 1993 D-Series, which would be the final model year, was essentially a 1972 truck with minor updates, looking ancient next to Ford's redesigned F-150 and Chevy's dramatically improved CK series. The interior still featured the same basic dashboard design from 1981. The ride quality was harsh compared to competitors' coil spring suspensions, and the available engines produced less power while consuming more fuel than modern alternatives. Chrysler made exactly 8,247 D-Series pickups in 1993, compared to Ford's 635,000 F-Series and Chevy's 567,000 CK trucks, numbers that showed how completely Dodge had abandoned this market segment. The few customers who bought 1993 D-Series trucks were die-hard loyalists who valued simplicity over technology, or fleet buyers getting deep discounts on obsolete inventory, not exactly a sustainable business model. Automotive journalists barely mentioned the D-Series in their annual truck comparisons, and when they did, it was usually as a cautionary example of what happens when manufacturers stop investing in their products. The Ram rebrand that erased history. Here's when Chrysler tried to start over. In 1994, they launched the all-new Ram pickup, a genuinely good truck with bold styling and modern features, but they completely abandoned the D-Series name and heritage. The Ram looked nothing like the D-Series with its aggressive big rig-inspired front end and car-like interior, and Chrysler's marketing explicitly positioned it as a revolutionary new product rather than an evolution of their truck legacy. This strategy worked commercially as Ram sales eventually reached 400,000 annually. But it meant the D-Series disappeared from American consciousness as if it had never existed. Chrysler never acknowledged the D-Series in Ram advertising, never referenced its heritage or reliability, and actively discouraged any connection between the old truck and the new one, fearing that reminding customers about the D-Series would highlight the years Chrysler had abandoned truck buyers. The rebrand was so complete that by 2000, salespeople at Dodge dealerships had never heard of the D-Series and couldn't tell customers anything about the trucks that had built the company's reputation in the 1970s. Why mechanics still praise them. Now this is something that tells the real story. Even 30 years after production ended, independent mechanics and small-town service shops still consider the 1970s D-Series among the easiest trucks to repair and maintain. The simple mechanical systems mean that with basic tools and knowledge, you can diagnose and fix almost any problem without computer scanners or specialized equipment that costs thousands of dollars. Parts remain available through aftermarket suppliers, and because so many D-Series trucks shared components with Dodge cars from the same era, you can often find what you need at regular junkyards for minimal cost. Mechanics report that a well-maintained D-Series with the Slant 6 or 318 V8 can still serve as a reliable daily driver in 2024. Something you absolutely cannot say about most 1980s trucks that have long since rusted away or suffered catastrophic failures. The D-Series' reputation among people who actually work on vehicles stands in stark contrast to its corporate abandonment, proving that Chrysler killed a genuinely good product for strategic reasons rather than because of any fundamental problems with the truck itself. The collector market that never materialized. Here's where things got disappointing for people who kept their trucks. Unlike Ford F-100s and Chevy C-10s from the same era, which became hot collector items worth $30,000 to $60,000 restored, D-Series pickups never gained significant collector value. The problem was visibility. Chrysler built far fewer D-Series trucks than competitors, and without continuing production or heritage marketing, younger enthusiasts didn't develop emotional connections to them. A fully restored 1978 D-Series Adventurer in excellent condition might bring $18,000 to $22,000 at auction, about half what an equivalent Ford or Chevy would command, despite being rarer and arguably better built. The collector market's rejection particularly hurt longtime owners who had kept their trucks pristine, expecting they'd eventually appreciate like other classic pickups, only to discover that scarcity without cultural relevance doesn't create value. Some D-Series owners have formed small clubs and online communities trying to preserve the truck's history, but they're fighting against decades of corporate neglect and public forgetfulness that's nearly impossible to overcome. The parts shortage that's killing survivors. Right, this is the crisis happening right now. As remaining D-Series trucks age into their fifth decade, critical parts are becoming impossible to find, and Chrysler stopped producing most components 20 years ago. Body panels are particularly scarce, with fenders, hoods, and bedsides unavailable through any official channels, forcing owners to scour junkyards or pay fabricators thousands of dollars to recreate panels from scratch. The situation is worse than for Ford and Chevy trucks because the aftermarket never developed robust reproduction parts supply, assuming incorrectly that demand would justify investment. Owners report waiting months or years for simple components like window regulators, door handles, and trim pieces, parts that remain readily available for F-100s and C-10s through multiple suppliers. This parts shortage means many restorable D-Series trucks get scrapped because the economics don't work. You can't justify spending $8,000 on custom fabrication for a truck worth $15,000 finished, accelerating the disappearance of these vehicles from American roads and ensuring future generations will never see them. The museum that doesn't care. Here's something that really shows how forgotten these trucks became. The Walter P. Chrysler Museum in Auburn Hills, Michigan, has exactly 0 D-Series pickups in its collection, despite these trucks selling nearly 2 million units and representing Chrysler's primary truck offering for over 20 years. The museum features concept cars, rare muscle cars, and even quirky failures like the Prowler. But apparently, nobody at Chrysler considered the D-Series worth preserving, a stunning omission that speaks volumes about corporate priorities. When enthusiasts contacted the museum asking about D-Series history, staff couldn't provide information beyond basic production statistics and suggested interested parties try independent automotive archives instead. This institutional neglect means there's no official documentation of design decisions, engineering innovations, or marketing strategies. Knowledge that's dying with the retired engineers and executives who created these trucks. The museum's indifference ensures that future automotive historians will struggle to research the D-Series, finding plenty of information about Chrysler's failures and successes in cars, but almost nothing about trucks that millions of Americans drove and depended on. The Ram success that proved Chrysler wrong. Now here's the irony that really stings. The Ram pickup that replaced the D-Series eventually became Chrysler's most profitable and successful product, proving that Iacocca's assumption that Dodge couldn't compete in trucks was completely wrong. By the 2000s, Ram was selling over 400,000 units annually and earning higher profit margins than any Chrysler car, with the truck division essentially subsidizing the struggling automobile business. The Ram proved that customers wanted Dodge trucks and were willing to pay premium prices for quality and capability, exactly what the D-Series had offered before Chrysler abandoned it. Industry analysts estimate that if Chrysler had invested in updating the D-Series through the 1980s instead of letting it stagnate, the company could have maintained 15 to 18% market share in full-size trucks worth billions in revenue and profits. Instead, they ceded the market to Ford and Chevy for over a decade, lost an entire generation of truck buyers, and had to rebuild from scratch with the Ram, spending hundreds of millions to regain ground they'd voluntarily surrendered, one of the most expensive strategic mistakes in automotive history. Why the D-Series failed when it should have dominated. All right, here's the real story. The D-Series failed not because it was inferior to competitors, but because Chrysler made a calculated decision to sacrifice the truck market to save the company in other segments. In the late 1970s, the D-Series was genuinely competitive with Ford and Chevy, offering comparable capability and superior durability in some respects. But when financial crisis hit, Iacocca decided trucks were expendable. The strategy worked for Chrysler overall. The minivan and K-cars did save the company, but it meant abandoning customers who'd been loyal for decades and destroying a product with genuine merit and market potential. Perhaps most frustrating is that the D-Series didn't need massive investment to remain competitive. It needed consistent updates, maintained quality control, and continued marketing support, relatively modest requirements that Chrysler refused to provide. The D-Series represents everything wrong with short-term corporate thinking, sacrificing long-term market position for immediate survival, alienating loyal customers, and destroying brand equity that took decades to build. If Chrysler had found a way to support the D-Series through the 1980s, even modestly, they might have maintained truck market share worth billions and avoided the expensive rebuild process that the Ram required. But instead, they chose the path of least resistance and killed one of America's most capable pickups. Well, there you have it. The complete story of the Dodge D-Series, from America's most capable work truck to forgotten memory in just 20 years. It's a reminder that great American products need more than quality. They need companies willing to fight for them. Make sure you subscribe and click on the next video on your screen.